Sexual immorality is one of the worst sins in the Bible. I want you to first look around you. The madness that has happened. Do you honestly believe it just happened? No, this is something that has been going on for years. I would like to point out how nowadays the sexualization of everything wholesome has been everywhere and affecting ages as young as 9 years old. If you want to stop the Pride Menace or stop the liberal garbage that's happening, it's important to hit the root of the problem, which is liberalism, specifically the sexual liberation. Now, let us get started. Starting the 1950s and the shift that happened within the 60s. Now, without further ado, please enjoy the video.
The man, though a king, is a slave if he doesn't control his passions, and a slave, if he does, is a free man. This was a complete revolution in terms of the idea of freedom, because before this time, freedom was always understood as something external, depending on external circumstances. In other words, if you had a tyrant, you didn't have freedom, and that was that. We have oligarchs that are trying to abolish representative government across the world, and the main reason they have power is because of pornography. That's because pornography robs you of the right of the ability to control yourself. They can control you from the outside, and then once you're controlled this way, you don't even know you're controlled.
Back in 1950, we need to establish two important things that distincted America in 1950 with the late 1960s of America. One important aspect being the pill. These pills were not invented yet and created consequences if two young people wanted to have sex. Back then, if they had sex, they would be punished by taking care of the kid and would be more careful when it came to the bed. This also made society less destructive, as the birthing pill proved to create an evil culture known as hookup culture, where two people would just have sex and then move on to the next person without consequence. The other aspect we need to look at that distinguishes the 1950s with the 60s was on societal pressure. Back in this time, society never improved on any of this felt today. Homosexuality, feminism, and other anti-Christian ideologies were looked down upon and were never close to the mainstream. Movies couldn't show any nudity out of fear of being censored by Christians. There were strict laws in place to make sure society was behaving correctly and that order was sustained together. It was also very taboo to even talk about sex, as sex was considered something of a private matter between family and spouses. You just don't talk about it and randomly bring it up. It's something private for one man and one woman to explore. There were no sex education classes, and children were taught more important things in the education system, so many children grew up intelligent but lacking in certain taboos like sex, and certain aspects of it I will lightly address later on. Women also dressed formally and looked very dignified and modest. This resulted in a very low rape rates, and if you think they didn't report the rates back then, understand that this was for anonymous groups. The point was that men and women were limited in how far and open they could be, which created a society where people were modest, polite, and had good discipline and record low STDs, along with record high marriage rates. But what changed?
As the years went by, houses bought multiple TVs which kids could use without their parents' supervision. Almost every TV channel during this time was controlled by one of three networks: ABC, NBC, and CBS. These networks were heavily tied to US intelligence agencies who used them to push their ideological agenda. This was known as Operation Mockingbird, and today, far from being a conspiracy theory, it's a matter of public record. When the Cultural Revolution began in the 1960s, news stations gave the protesters overwhelmingly positive coverage. Meanwhile, those who defended American culture and Western traditions were painted as the villains. A new pop culture based on the latest shows, movies, and music began to develop in America, replacing much of its ancient European culture that had been passed down for generations. This resulted in deracination, or, in other words, the loss of people's roots. The cultures of Hollywood and Washington, D.C. were exported to the entire United States, and regional cultures started to decline.
Well, what now happened was the unfortunate trend the 1950s was going. Post 1945 would create growth of liberalism, an important key part to loom at, the decline of religion. Liberalism was something back in the Enlightenment era, but since everyone was religious, it never was as large of a threat as it is today. Due to the result of a decline in religion, it would open up the sexual revolution and complete degeneracy within our society. It was bad enough with movies and TV promoting bad content to people, but now the judicial system was getting in on it with legitimizing inappropriate and degenerate content. The excuse was they're adults, and that's the First Amendment. But what they neglected was how this would affect the populace into becoming weaker. The sexual revolution would start already bad enough, but in its logical conclusion, it now is affecting children and warping their minds.
Author E. Michael Jones explains why contraception is so significant. It's the thin end of the wedge that disconnects sex from its natural purpose of reproduction. And once sex loses its original purpose, moral chaos isn't far behind.
If you want my honest opinion, the Cultural Revolution was the legalization of contraception. The sexual revolution followed from that, abortion followed from that, and homosexual rights is only the logical consequence of the use of the contraceptive.
And he was absolutely proven right. After the legalization of contraception in the 1960s, abortion followed with Roe v. Wade in the 1970s. Each new aspect of sexual behavior that was legalized flowed from the exact same anti-Christian, hyper-individualist moral philosophy that personal pleasure is the highest value of life.
Hookup culture also became popular, especially with the birth pill and abortion being perfectly legal. What most people also fail to understand is the connection a person has after sex. When two people have sex, it creates a chemical reaction and bonds the two.
Do away with all that, but the condom's fine, so let's just use that.
Yeah, we all know from like 7th grade biology, one sperm gets a girl pregnant. Okay. What happens the other hundreds of millions introduced to one act of intercourse? It used to be believed that if the woman wasn't fertilized, they really didn't serve any purpose, but they found it's not actually true, that inside the man's seminal fluid are dozens of biological ingredients. They're immediately absorbed into the woman's circulatory system. So literally within hours of intercourse, your hormones are through her entire body, in her brain. Your DNA is embedding in her organs. After intercourse, the woman's the white blood cells will scour the surface of her cervix and bring the man's sperm proteins and DNA into her lymph nodes, where her immune system will learn to recognize the genetic type of that man's sperm. It says they'll actually develop a gradual tolerance to the antigen on that male's semen. It'll learn who this person is. Yeah. And what they found is if a woman is deprived of this by means of a barrier method of contraception, and then she becomes pregnant, the woman's womb will not have been accustomed to that child. So where she does get pregnant from him, after being used to that, the woman's womb will actually recognize the genetic type of baby, match it to the genetic type of sperm that absorbed into her, makes for a smoother pregnancy. They found when it's deprived of this, the woman will be more than twice as likely to suffer preeclampsia during childbirth, which is an elevated blood pressure risk. It's very dangerous to the mom. And so I'm sitting on an airplane, typing from the Journal of the American Medical Association, I was explaining this, into a little book I was writing. And the woman on the plane leans over next to me and she's like, what are you writing about? I'm like, let me tell you. And so I said, this is an epidemiologic study of contraception preeclampsia, and I showed it to her, and she's like, oh, can I read that? And I explained it, and she says, this is amazing. She said, you know what, my husband and I she said, I know we just met, but I feel like I know you so well. She said, my husband and I have been married for 10 years. We've used the condom between every kid. I had preeclampsia with every pregnancy. Wow. How come no one taught this to us in marriage preparation class?
Now that men and women just hook up, even now mixing it with kinks and fetishes, has created depression and a destructive mindset of sex. Not to mention the massive inequality of the sexual market, with 20% of men being able to have 80% of all the women through resources and hypergamy. Since young men start with less, they're going to struggle even more in finding a mate, bringing more loneliness to them. This area I will address quickly, but now that the internet has released creepy degenerates to connecting with the world more, we see conversation of things like bestiality, pedophilia, sodomy, fornication, and other sexual immoralities. Watch out for this stuff. This openness about sexual contents have now made the idea of accepting certain behaviors encouraged. Homosexuality is one example, as when it was accepted, it would lead to the pathway of more of this stuff accepted, starting back when sex first became something not that big of a deal to talk about and treated as something more lightly and just for pleasure. Our movies, Music and media have done this for decades, and with rap music, it makes it worse and worse. Homosexuality leads to LGBT movement, which became LGBT, including transgenderism, and now is LGBTQ, which includes queer.
Do you support gay marriage?
No, Barack Obama nor I support redefining from a civil side what constitutes marriage. We do not support that.
And advocate for political prisoners and condemn the persecution of women or religious minorities or people who are lesbian, gay, bisexual, or transgender. We do these things not only because they are the...
Sexual liberation is political control. It's a form of political control. And you have multiple times advocated on behalf of accepting homosexuality, accepting homosexual acts as normative in the conservative movement. How does anal sex help us win the culture war?
Honestly, I don't care what two consenting adults do.
This is not to say that they're all evil, but the acts they participate in are wrong to openly talk about and are reason of our society getting more open to all these things. This is also like a market. If a woman shows her naked body to her partner, the value is way higher and greater as it's only for you and her to share. When a woman shows that resource to other people all around to see, you have now demeaned the value of that resource. I know, it's a very corporate way of looking at it, but the fact is, that's how humans behave. Men will be putting in value and resources for a woman, and the woman provides two extremely important things. Love, which includes sex, since they're the gatekeepers, and simple romance, having a partner. You know wholesome things too, and children, as she will take care of the kids. When those two important aspects are gone, there is no real reason for men to invest within a wife. That's why children are so important, not just continuing the human race, but also keeping marriages stable and giving a purpose to a mother. That's why nobody will date a slut, and that's why it should be shamed. It's degenerate, and no man wants to invest with a woman that has been through many men and will be unable to mother the children. For men need to be providers. They can't be irresponsible and must go and work, take the pain and take the suffering to be able to have a wife and kids. A marriage should also be like private property. When it's private, the property is much more valuable and secure. When it's public for anyone to take part in and see, that destroys the value and ruins the relationship. That's also why we need to make conversation about sex taboo. As I stated before, I will own my future wife as my future wife will own me, under the leadership of the Lord. It's not evil, it's not slavery. It's called a bond. I know many people say things like, oh, limit OnlyFans, or even ban it. I say we need to take things a step further. OnlyFans has now become mainstream because nobody fought against porn until it became something inevitable to address. If we want to save our country and decency in our nation, we have to have a nationwide ban on porn. It's not relaxing, it's not your hobby, it's destructive and immoral. Women need to stop being whores, as this is not only destroying themselves with them selling their souls to the devil, but also plays into the materialist worldview. Corporations make billions from depressed, destroyed men who lost their whole role of life. All life now is just sex, money, expensive trips, and eventually death, without you putting any meaning or care with yourself. We will all get older. We will all get weaker. And eventually, we will die. We must put something of value, or what's the point of this life? God is the only one who can redeem us. The other point I want to address is how rape, suicide, shootings, and other destructive and immoral behaviors have been on the rise. Though not the main reason, the sexual revolution played a big part of that rise, which is why so many Americans now realize things are not going the right way. The reason why rape in particular is high is due to weak men now addicted to sex, even to the point of raping people. Not to mention immigration, but that's a different topic. These men are obviously in the wrong, but it also shows how the sexual revolution messed up men and destroyed them, making many of them into monsters. I also add, when women dress up scantily and show off their body, especially if they walk around a bar at night, it's inviting evil, as she is not being a lady, but being a person who invites anyone to advance her.
What about conservatives? What did they do this entire time? Did they fight back? Did they really do anything?
Wrong.
They would cave in and even embrace liberalism. Which is why now people like Dave Rubin are being praised on Fox News, while Christianity being separated from conservatism on the fake right. As porn was rising, what did conservatives do? When the judicial system legalized the birth pill and abortion, what did conservatives do? What did conservatives do? When the sexual revolution was making women into prostitutes and men into degenerates, what the hell did conservatives do? You know what? Those who let that happen shouldn't even be called conservative. I would just call them liberals who are sympathetic to Christianity.
God finds this stuff immoral, and I see so many people be fine with showing porn stars to promote conservative values. It's just despicable. We are a Christian country and we have to promote Christian values. Screw the Big Tent if it means giving up on our values. How to solve this? Our solution has to be on fighting back against individualism and how liberalism has intensified desire for evil. In other words, society needs to pressure people upon the Christian faith, and the state should play a role in promoting the general welfare and faith of its citizens. We need to make certain things taboo and limit our rights. I know the usual thing is give people more rights, but we have been doing this for decades, and it's resulted in an unorthodox and uncivilized society that is so at each other's throats. It's no wonder we may be on the brink of a civil war in the near future. On an individual level, you need to go to church. Or if you're an atheist, I recommend you watch YouTubers like Kyle, Redeem Zoomer, or PaxTube, as they are good Christian channels I would recommend. I will link them down below if you're curious. Back to it, you need to stay strong, pray, read your Bible, and especially for this case, you stay celibate and wait till marriage. Christ mentions how sexual immorality is dangerous, and we need to make sure we don't have any sexual immorality in our lives, which would be acts such as bestiality, fornication, incest, homosexuality, sodomy, and much more. On a large scale, I have no real solution as I have no idea how to solve it all. I conclude that we need to take Christianity seriously and treat it more than just a hobby, and we must make sure this country is a Christian country that doesn't tolerate sexual immorality. Then and only then can we be able to reverse the effects of the sexual revolution. Hey, what's up? So this is kind of the afterthoughts of making the video. I just wanted to give some, insight, stuff like that. This video, I had the script months ago, like a long time ago, man. It's a little unorganized, I'm gonna admit, but I put a lot of passion in it. I cared a lot on this because honestly, I've been a little bit more interested in talking about the cultural side of things, like masculinity, dating, things that are a little bit more relevant to me. I like politics and economics, don't get me wrong, but this has kind of been interesting me a bit to talk about. I also love history, so I want to do more stuff like that. I will still do some politics. I just don't know if I'll upload on the main channel or I'll just stick to live streaming that. But anyways, with that side, I really liked making this video, and I mean, yeah, 6 months, man. I had this script 6 months ago. It's so crazy. But I'm glad I managed to get it to 20 minutes, and I think the thumbnail is gonna look nice. This is before the thumbnail is created, so thinking we have something similar to what PaxTube did. I don't mean to copy him. This has kind of been, I guess, an add-on because I was inspired from him watching that video for the first time. Man, PaxTube is awesome. I love the dude. But anyways, yeah, so I'll get this going. I want like an AI generated or scaled in so it looks better, and it's like something with the the Chad meme, and right next to on the right you have like Jezebel. Yeah, Jezebel or something, or Marilyn Monroe. And, well, Marilyn Monroe was already from Backstooth, so I don't want to copy him. I'll probably do like a Jezebel or the Scarlet Witch from what was it, the Beast. Maybe I can make the Beast, from Revelation. So that's some ideas. Shout out to Retaking the Nation. Shout out to Arthur Greenwood, my buds. They make great content. I hope this video gets some attention because I put a lot of effort, and I don't know, it's really hard to hit 20 minutes. But anyways, yeah, that's it. Thank you so much for watching this, and yeah, Bennett signing out.